Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
Politics Done Right. Show. We are going to have a great show for you today, as usual. Anyway, folks, we have. Hey, by the way, do you want a $3,500 iPhone? You know, I'm not an elitist. I don't use the iPhone. I use the droids, man. I use the droids. Anyway, welcome aboard. Number one in the house today was AVQ, El Señor Rodnen from Brooklyn, New York. Second in the house today, Patrick Magner from Houston, Texas. By the way, from our brothers and sisters in the Substack feed, why don't you go ahead and put your city and state? I like to call some of them out. City and state, call them. Put your in that. You know, if you're on the phone, there's that little box. Type your city and state in there. If you're on the computer screen, click on the video on the computer screen, and then you'll have the whole live chat that shows up on the side if you're in Substack. Anyway, folks, let's get busy. So, our third in the house today was our wonderful or beautiful Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. Michael Rudden, I called that out already. E2247. He is from all over. He never quite says where he is from. Likewise, we have Harry Denson. I think Harry is in the metropolitan Houston area. I don't remember quite what town he is in. He says, good afternoon, Dr. Harry Denson Jr. from Missouri City. Missouri City, Texas is in the house. Lisa Blair, I'm Team iPhone. La, 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 la. My elitist Lisa Blair. I'm kidding you, girl. I'm kidding you, girl. Lisa, you're in Atlanta, right? Atlanta, Georgia, or somewhere in Georgia, I think. Correct me if not. It is Peña's birthday. Happy birthday, Peña. Happy birthday, senor. Feliz cumpleaños. All right. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Let's see if anybody. Okay, Deborah J is from Fairfax, Virginia. We have Alexa from Blackburn, Virginia. I'll be calling the folks out who put their city and state in that thing. Otherwise, it's just too many. Agolf Twitler, he says, trickle down is out. Yes, she's from Atlanta. All right, Agolf says tax cuts that give 83% to the richest 1% of Americans, just like 2017. And the tariffs, what? The 99% pay 99% of it to make it up. Yes, it does. And we're going to cover quite a bit of that today. AVQ says, set a radio alarm to get me here on time. Twitch starts automatically soon as you start live streaming. It's why I'm first nearly every time. So you're cheating, Mr. El Señor. You're cheating. Edward Peña, feliz cumpleaños. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Edward Peña. Happy birthday to you. I love my peeps. All right, let's see what else we got here. Michael Rudnin has something for the screen. Is it appropriate? Absolutely so. Let's go ahead and get that onto the screen. I think I need to blow it up some, though. Let me blow it up some and then tell you guys what it says, because Michael Rudnin came up with a good piece here, and I'm going to cover my face. I want everybody to see it. All right, the major parts of Trump and Republican taxes and immigration package. The red represent increases to the national debt over 10 years, and the teal represents savings. This is going to be fantastic to find out. Extend the 2014 tax cut for Donald Trump for the wealthy, $2.2 trillion. Increase standard deduction, $1.3 trillion. You know, the standard deduction increase is for the poor people, 1.3 deduction, but there are hundreds of millions of those, and a few tax cuts for the regular rich people, 2.2 trillion. Increased child credit, 797 billion. Defense spending, 148.5 billion. Border wall and immigration restrictions, $147.3 billion. Why is defense getting $148 billion? Don't we spend more than 10 times what the other next available country spends, and we are spending more than the next 10 countries or something like that? No tax on overtime, $124 billion. Senior bonus, $71 billion. No tax on car loan interest, $57 billion. No tax on tips, $39 billion. Savings account for newborns, 17.4 billion. Homeschooling and private school tax credit, 2 billion. New oil and gas production, $19 billion. That is supposed to be a savings. A spectrum auction. Let me explain what spectrum auction is, man. The airwaves are supposed to belong to all of us, right? Now, I think that spectrum action is going to cover what used to be the VHS and UHF signals. We're not doing TV on VHS and UHF anymore. So I imagine that is what they're going to be auctioning off. A student loan changes, $295 billion. In other words, hey, we're getting money from those student loans. Cuts to Medicaid, $625 billion. Rescind climate change money. In other words, who cares about climate change? Burn the earth up, $677 billion. And raise the salt cap to $30,000. I thought it was supposed to go to 40,000. It was only 30. That's $915.6 billion. The salt cap is scored as a budget savings, but because the current 10,000 cap is set to expire at the end of the year, allowing unlimited salt deduction, raising the cap to 30,000 would generate a savings by limiting the amount of deductions. I gotta understand that a little bit better. But let me just say this, because it is important that we understand something here, right? And by the way, remember, if they say there is a savings, remember what it actually means. It means that they're cutting, all right? If there's a savings, it actually means they're cutting something. Now, that's why I don't quite understand the salt stuff quite yet. I got to figure that one out. But here's the funny thing. All the things going towards the middle class expire. Understand this. That which goes to the wealthy, those tax breaks that go to the wealthy, they don't have an expiration built into the law. In other words, it doesn't have to re-up. It just continues. But all the stuff for the poor people expires. Michael, then you can go ahead and find a justification for what I just said if you have a chance to do so. But that is what we're looking at here, folks. This is an evil, 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 evil bill. And I think the quicker we understand that, the better we can actually see that. All right, let's see what else we got here. Deborah J said, I think they will use the military against us, thus the increase. Let me tell you something, Deborah J. I don't think our brothers and sisters in the military, if given the order to shoot our brothers and sisters here in America, will do it. I just don't think we have reached that stage. I don't think anybody wants to shoot anybody's mother, father, brother, sister, or anything like that. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think Trump thinks it will. I think he does believe it will, because he asked a general in this last administration, can we shoot them in the leg, and just to kind of clear out the areas. But I don't think it's something that's gonna happen. That's my thought. Maybe I am green, but I don't think that's the case. All right, let's see. Bruce is in the house. Bruce says, usually they claim a savings over 10 years, not enough in 1 year to reduce the estimate. And I think if I recall correctly, some of these things really only go for 2 years. All right, E2247 says if you make between 17,000 and 51,000, you will lose about 700 a year. On average, Americans with incomes of less than 17,000 will lose more than 1,000 a year. But if you're among the top 0.1% of earners, you're in luck. You'll gain nearly $390,000 a year. But if you're among the top 0.01 earners, you're in luck. You'll gain nearly 390. Yeah, I get it. I get it. E2247 also said because a massive debt increase in the measure triggers a 2010 law requiring offset. That is how Medicare got into the picture. Medicare is gonna lose $500 billion because of how big the deficit is. It's a shame, but we said it wasn't going to cover. Okay, it's not like American history doesn't have multiple instances of our military shooting at our own people. History will rhyme. Yeah, I remember, what was it? Kent State, right? I think Kent State is something that people will remember, but again, I don't think enough in the military will want to harm people in the aggregate. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, Michael. You're absolutely right. I could be wrong. Michael also says the cuts to Medicare and green energy are going to be a disaster. All this to transfer the wealth from the bottom 20% to the top 0.1%. Yeah, that's what it's all about. That is what it's all about. We hate poor people. We hate marginalized people. And you know what? 60% of Americans are one paycheck away from poverty. Think about that. And already we have some in poverty, you know that. But anyhow, if you want to understand, Harry Denson says, Egberto elated that the Supreme Court blocked the convicted felon president and his administration from trying to stop foreign students from from attending Harvard. But it's a temporary injunction. We got to make sure that it's not temporary. Maywood, good afternoon from Long Beach, California. Welcome aboard. All those newcomers into Substack, let me know where you're from, city and state. If you can, just type it in and I'll read it out. Let's see who else came in before I go. Bruce is from Kingwood, Atascocita. Oh, no, Bruce is from Kingwood. I'm sorry. Bruce is from Kingwood. All right, let's get busy. I got two very important videos for you. The first one is, we're talking about debt. We have to realize who Donald Trump really is when we talk about debt. So I have this piece that I think it's urgent for everyone to see. This guy who is here destroying our country. Donald Trump always says he's a king of debt. He loves debt. He doesn't mind screwing people over. He doesn't mind borrowing money, failing a business, not paying it back, and then going on to the other one. Again, there are some people in our economic system that they have the privilege that they can screw up over and over and again. It doesn't matter that they have no real backing. They get unlimited credit. They get abilities to fail. They can fail upward, as Donald Trump has failed upward right into the presidency. No time in our history did we have such a businessman that has had a completely failing record, one who has many believe kind of gotten some of his funding, etc., from mob-like figures. Never in our history would we believe that would become a president. And then again, just look at a few days ago, or maybe last night, when he had a whole bunch of folks who bought his cryptocurrency, something based on nothing, just a high legal way to provide provide bribes to him. So I mean, this is who we have as a leader. And in the attempt to run our country like he run his fraudulent businesses, the outcome that we're looking at is exactly as this economist is talking about. Will we become Argentina? Well, you know what? We are solidly on our way, because we have a Congress, we have a Senate that is filled up with a bunch of boys, coward boys, unable to look at a paper tiger, stand up to him and said, "You're not going to get it." But again, the MAGA people will eventually have to speak when they start to feel the pain. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side. The king of debt.
I call myself the king of debt. I'm the king of debt. I'm great with debt. Nobody knows debt better than me. I've made a fortune by using debt. And if things don't work out, I renegotiate the debt. I mean, that's a smart thing, not a stupid thing. And I made a fortune.
How do you renegotiate the debt?
Because you go back and you say, hey, guess what? The economy just crashed. I'm going to give you back half.
Oh, wow. Justin, quote, "Oh, the economy just crashed. I'm going to give you back half." I mean, you take your 4 events, whatever it's called, Liberation Day, threatening to fire Jerome Powell, which you quickly walk back because the economy threatened to crater. You have all these, we're almost there. Just talk a little bit more about the intersection of the country's debt and people's day-to-day lives.
Yeah, so I want to pick up where the president left off there. So private bankruptcy, which the president used liberally, is a terrific way to get rich by screwing other people. What you do is you take a bet. Heads, you win, you're rich, off you go. Tails, you just declare bankruptcy and you don't have to repay your debts. That works for people. It doesn't work for countries. And if you want to know who to ask Argentina, which 100 years ago was one of the richest countries in the world and has struggled to repay its debt on and off ever since. And as a result has had a dysfunctional government that's often been unable to borrow, and its economy has basically failed to prosper over an entire century. And that's not who we want to be. How does this touch? So one way it touches our lives is it could be the first step towards being Argentina. I really hope we're not. A more direct way is simply that if the government's paying interest, just like your family, if you're paying on your mortgage, there's less money left to buy other stuff, which means that we'll still be paying taxes. We just won't be getting much back for it. Nicole, I want to highlight one really important part of the current budget discussion. So you're talking right now about this very important issue, which is how much we spend versus we tax. That's the budget deficit. There's also a Robin Hood aspect. How much do we take from who and what do we give to who? This is the anti-Robin Hood. This is, according to one of my favorite budget wonks, Bobby Kogan, he said this is the largest redistribution from poor to rich in American history. So if you're okay with those at the bottom end of the income distribution getting by with less because you think it's important that those at the very top end get tax cuts and therefore have more resources to get by, that's fine by you. But for those of us with a heart, honestly, it breaks our hearts a little bit.
Well, and it should break everybody's heart. I mean, it'll break the economic vitality of this country. Our resilience after COVID wasn't because the rich kept getting richer. It was because the consumer kept somehow finding enough optimism to go out and buy things. I mean, Tim, where does this break the MAGA movement politically if it does?
Yeah, well, it would happen, I think, 6 months to a year from now. This is not short term because you're seeing the cracks in Congress right now. But it breaks apart this MAGA movement because this kind of uneasy coalition between your Wall Street Journal, country club Republican crowd that wants the tax cuts, that wants the SALT deduction. They want one element of this. You have your new populist MAGA types that don't want these cuts to Medicaid and SNAP, at least in red states. You have the remaining Tea Party budget hawk types that are trying to find the cuts to pay for these tax cuts, right? And so they're all infighting. And at the end of the day, to get it through, what they've come up with is this Frankenstein monster that jacks up the debt by $6 trillion, that still cuts money for SNAP and Medicaid, and that gives the tax cuts to the wealthy and to like these upper middle class, kind of country club Republican voters, particularly in big cities. And so they're doing that because they want to give a little bit to everybody. But when on the back end of that, when you end up with spiking interest rates for middle class folks, when you end up with working class people losing their SNAP benefits and healthcare, there's going to be big parts of the MAGA coalition that are mad. And I think that is, where this is heading, assuming they jam this thing through. It's going to take a little time for all that to filter through the economy.
So the king of debt doesn't mind putting in words that, well, if you borrow some money and the economy crash, I'll give you X on the dollar. Well, you can't borrow money if people believe there's a possibility they would only get a percentage of their dollar back on their principal. A country can't work like that because you know what? When people buy your bonds, they expect that the faith that they have in the United States that we've had for centuries would remain. And that's why we can have a paper dollar that is backed by nothing but the faith in the United States. That is why we can have a dollar. It's called fiat money. Actually, it's simply based on we will pay our bills back. Donald Trump is bringing all the cancers that he had within his own businesses to America. Now he's bringing all the social ills, all the financial ills, all the mobbish techniques that he used in his own businesses. He is bringing that to the United States, and that doesn't bode well for who we are. And what that really means is that, look, this is not a lot of what's happening right now isn't happening in the open, but the countries around the world don't think that BRICS or some spin-off thereof is not being thought of right now to really start the replacement of a failed nation. Because any nation governed by the likes of Donald Trump or the train that he'll leave behind him, anybody who supports Donald Trump, talking about leadership now, any one of them that intend to come in and follow the type of governance that Donald Trump represents, puts what was the American stand-in clear and present danger. And that's just where we are. This is going to take a generation to recover from if we can start a recovery. But until we start a recovery by becoming more informed, by becoming more intelligent, by becoming more of all these things so that we don't stand the risk of making the mistake we've made to elect scumbag is actually a nice word to represent him. It doesn't accurately describe him sufficiently negative as it should. But anytime we have to, or going forward, we have to prove that we as a country won't make this mistake again. We have to prove that we won't do it. Otherwise, it's all gone. That is something that we have to be aware of. V. Smith, thank you for becoming a new paid subscriber of our network, of our newsletter. We can't do this without you. You made my day doing that right now. Others, please join. That is the only way we can continue to get this work done. Now, here is the thing, folks. I mean, this is so important. I think what we fail to see is that we are being hoodwinked. And we're being hoodwinked, not the smart one of you guys. A lot of smart folks out here. And you just can't believe how this guy can get away with what he's doing. There is a sect in this country that are willfully ignorant because it fulfills some of their prejudices in respect about how it affects their family. I said I wasn't going to spend a lot of time on South Africa, right? I said I wasn't going to do it. But what Donald Trump did in that room was so blatantly false, from the crosses representing graves to the actual information that he was giving out, which didn't even occur in South Africa, but the Congo. I don't know who's doing the research for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump doesn't have the intellect to do any research. But they're just passing him bad information and lies. And because he's the standard bearer, his MAGA base just takes it and believe it. So I just want to present you with a validated TikTok here about this South Africa. And I'm just saying it. I'm putting this not in the South African realm, but in the realm to understand who this supremacist really is and what he represents. And that lying for him doesn't really matter. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's see.
Donald Trump seems to be on a mission to have ever-increasingly embarrassing meetings in the Oval Office. Most recently, he hosted the president of South Africa, who he looked in the face and told, "Your country has a white genocide." And the president was like, "Well, respectfully, no, that's not happening." And Donald Trump's like, "Yes, it is." And then he pulled out evidence, only that evidence has all been debunked. Like, he showed a video of all of these little white crosses along a roadway. And Donald Trump said, these are burial sites right here. And then he said, each one of these white things you see is a cross. There's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers, the family of white farmers. Those people are all killed, Trump added. Yeah, so first of all, apparently people are just buried on top of each other along a roadway, by his logic. No, those are not burial sites, nor do they represent dead farmers, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can take the word of the man who put up those crosses. There were 2 farmers who were killed, and as part of a protest to that, they went along this roadway and put white crosses up that were then removed after the protest. They didn't represent individual people. It was just about these 2 people. Then Donald Trump showed a video where a person in a red beret repeatedly chants, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer," and speaks about taking land without compensation. That person is Julius Malema, who founded the small but radical party Economic Freedom Fighters after being expelled from the African National Congress, of which the president is a member. And after playing that video, the president explained to Donald Trump that does not represent the policies of this government. South Africa's opposition agriculture minister also said many parties had worked to keep extremists out of government. That guy and his group are extremists. They are not in power. And then Donald Trump pulled out a photo and he's like, these are dead white people who were killed in the genocide. The picture he's showing is from the Congo, because Africa is a continent that has many countries within it. It wasn't in South Africa that happened. It was in the Congo. And in response, the president of South Africa, who had to sit there and be berated by a man who confidently declared things that were categorically false and used evidence that was inaccurate and not true, his only response he could really say was, "I'm sorry I don't have a plane to give you." Because apparently this administration, if you do something like gift them a plane, they forgive all kinds of terrible things. But today, my feed is full of conservative creators who all made the same video where they look at the camera and have music playing and they nod as text on the screen reads, "Donald Trump confronting the president of South Africa about the white genocide is exactly what I voted for." Is it? You voted for theatrics based on conspiracy theories that are false, using fake information? That's what you voted for? Meanwhile, while you're celebrating this big W, more than 7 million could lose Medicaid in House mega bill approved Thursday. Yeah, they're going to take away Medicaid for a ton of people, not to mention all the food assistance programs that are being shut down that will affect children, will affect veterans, will affect seniors. And you're too busy looking over here as they snap their fingers and go, "White genocide, look what's happening in South Africa, we got to help." And you're like, "Oh, that's terrible," as they literally rob basic shit from you, as they use your tax dollars to import white immigrants and simultaneously use your tax dollars to deport brown immigrants. And I'm all for people who need protection being allowed to come here and seek protection. But meanwhile, he's revoked the protection, the asylum status of thousands of Venezuelans, for example, who face actual real threats, while giving it to people who aren't facing the threats that he's made up. That's this administration. Donald Trump seems to be on a mission to have ever increasingly embarrassing meetings in the open.
I mean, that is, to have a president that is so incompetent that his researchers or whatever would have him present that on the international stage with another president. It's not just despicable for us as Americans to the rest of the world. What it really is, however, is he has a group of folks in America that choose to be willfully ignorant, that eats this stuff up. As the brother said here, his feed was full of people saying, "Yeah, that's what we want Donald Trump to do." We have Lee Grant saying, "How is chant to kill the boer not called genocide?" Well, we have chants from groups here saying Jews will not replace us. All Donald Trump's people, anti-Jew folk from Donald Trump. Are we calling it a genocide? I don't think so. We had a person gun down 2 innocent Jewish representatives 2 days ago. Do we have a Jewish genocide problem in the United States? I don't think so. Again, use your heads. But again, the mere fact that we have, look in the chat, brothers and sisters, some folks in our chat right now, they have chosen to fall for the okie doke. What does that say about their mental acuity? What does it say? These are the same people. Look, 2 innocent Jewish young people got gunned down in Washington, D.C. That is horrendous. That's terrible. That's criminal. That's murder. But how comes those same people who claim to love humanity doesn't look at the same incidents in Gaza where there are over 100,000 kids and women and people, innocent people dead, gunned down, a mass bombing of the whole strip for 1,200 innocent dead Jewish folk? Yes, we acknowledge that terrorism. But what is Israel effecting on Gaza compared to what was effected on them? What has happened so often is we have created narratives that actually blinds the mind of the gullible. Because you can't look at Gaza, that is right next to many other cities in Israel, right? You look at Tel Aviv, skyscrapers and beautiful cities, and even as we've had missiles sent to Tel Aviv, nothing is destroyed and destructed. We look at Haifa, it's just fine. We look at Jerusalem, nice, beautiful city, life goes on, the cafes are open, people are fed. You go to Gaza, you see suffering. People that had nothing to do with murdering Israelis, suffering, dying under buildings, death. Yesterday, I think over 100 people killed. Think about that. And you understand what we're saying. It is a sham. It is a shame. It is a sham. It is a shame. If you believe life for one folk, you should believe life for the other. If you believe the life of those 2 innocent young people who died a couple of days ago are precious, and I do believe those lives are precious, you better believe those lives of every Gazan that Netanyahu and his IDF are murdering in a genocidal fashion. You must believe that that is wrong as well. If you don't, there is something wrong with the way you process, completely wrong with how you process. Okay, let's see what else we got here. I have another important video for you. But beforehand, let me look at some commentary. Egberto playing a video full of lies. Of course, you couldn't tell me not one of the issues that were actually lies. But again, I wouldn't expect you to know that, my brother. E2247 says, war on Harvard intensifies. Leading free speech advocate explains how all this is already stiffening institutional resistance to 47 and why his broader project may not go the way he hopes. It won't. It won't go the way it hopes. Michael Radden says, Egberto, right-wing bubble research typically amounts to going on local media and looking for the first thing that matches their preconceived beliefs. Now, that is true. That is true. I've noticed that decidedly. All right. I think I saw somebody came in that actually gave us a city. Martha is from Marietta, Georgia, on our Substack. Hi, Martha. All right, let's see what else we got here. What else have we got here? What else have we got here? What else have we got here? Okay, we have another video for you. This one is also important. This one is about the evil of of what they're doing with SNAP. Here we go, and we'll then take it on the other side. When Congress writes a bill, it has consequences. And often those consequences aren't immediately known. The thing about it is the one big, beautiful bill that Donald Trump put out there, we know what the consequences are because you know what? It is quite evident and it is quite exposed. One of the consequences of this bill is that it's going to cut approximately 10 billion meals a year that normally goes to our poor folks who we have not made corporations paid them appropriately. So therefore, there are many people out there that are working, but still have to visit food banks. Why? Not because they're lazy, not because they don't want to work. They don't qualify for food stamps, so they have to go to food banks. But you know what? With the changes that they're talking about making to SNAP, the food stamp program, many of those people will have to use food banks going forward. And the food banks right now are receiving over 60% more visitors than they did 3 years ago. That just shows you the state that the country is in right now. The richest country in the world, the country that produces more food than it can use, a country that exports all the food. And the people in this country, a large plurality, are not making enough money to not keep them in a state of angst, and many having to either be on food stamps or going to food pantries. I want you to listen to this. I want you to listen to this leader of one of the big food distributors in Atlanta. Let him explain what we're going to go through, and then take a look at the map to see where this bill is going to affect people over the entire country and where most of that demand is going to be. Like I mentioned on my KPFT program this morning, there is a certain level of evil. There is a certain level of evil that you can have, that you have to write a bill where, in order to give tax breaks to a whole bunch of folks who make a lot of money that they don't deserve making because they've made it on these poor people that we're cutting, they're making their monies on these people's backs, but we are willing to cut more to pass that buck to the wealthy. There's a degree of evil, and we as Americans need to start seeing it the way it should be seen. What that budget is doing is evil. The writers are evil. You cannot be but evil to do what this bill is doing. I want you to listen to this, then we'll take it on the other side.
A new map from USA Today shows it could severely impact the poorest Americans. If that mega bill would pass, each highlighted state would have to pay at least $98 more a year for each person on food assistance to make up for the $267 billion that was slashed from the program. Food banks across the country are said to be terrified, saying it would create an unsolvable crisis as need skyrockets. In Atlanta, the community food bank says demand has jumped 60% in just the past 3 years. That's where we find my next guest. Kyle Wade, president and CEO of the Atlanta Community Food Bank, which serves more than 800,000 people across 29 counties in North Georgia. Kyle, first of all, thanks for being with us. What are you seeing right now in terms of food need?
Well, thanks for having me. And as you just said, demand for food assistance is as high as we've seen it in Metro Atlanta. That we know that the same is true for food banks all across the country. Lines are just getting longer and longer at food pantries. And as you mentioned, we're serving 60% more people today than we did just a few years ago. So demand is really high. And the last thing we need right now is to have a significant cut in programs to get resources to economically vulnerable families. That would put an extraordinary amount of additional pressure on food banks and other social programs that are serving those families.
Can you give us some specifics, for example? I mean, how would those cuts to SNAP, again, they now have to go to the Senate, but how could it impact your ability to serve? What would you do?
Well, look, in terms of the scale of what's being proposed, the net effect of the cuts that were included in the House bill would be the same as if we eliminated the entire food bank network in the country. That's the scope of what would be cut from assistance to families. We'd essentially eliminate all of the food bank activity that exists across the country.
I just want to make sure I understand you, because that's a shocking statement. Are you essentially saying if this goes through, every single food bank in America would have to double the amount of food, double the amount of people they serve potentially, just to meet the need to keep people from going hungry?
Yes, there are different estimates for what the bill would actually eliminate, but at least one estimate would suggest the equivalent of close to 10 billion meals a year in the amount of food that's provided to families. You know, it's $30 billion worth of food a year that's being proposed being cut from the SNAP program, and that's more than what food banks collectively distribute every single year. So we don't know if all of that demand would ultimately come to us, but we're talking about doubling or more our output to provide that same amount of food.
There are a number of people who, in arguing for this, believe that there's tons of waste, fraud, and abuse. They believe that there are people who could and should be working who are not. They give you a lot of reasons for why they think that these cuts are okay. You deal with this on a day-to-day basis. Is that your experience?
Well, it's certainly not our experience. The vast majority of people who receive support from food banks are families who are working. A lot of the increase in demand I referenced are among families who actually make too much money to even qualify for SNAP. And the folks who are on SNAP predominantly include families, households with children, senior households, disabled households. So the folks who can work are working in our experience. And if we were to remove a lot of those folks from the program through a variety of different proposed mechanisms in the bill, that would just result in more demand coming to food banks, a level of demand that is beyond what we really have the capacity to provide.
So absolutely. Good that there are a lot of people out there doing good work. But when you are fighting against an evil government, and I am using this word not sparingly now, but I'm using this word the way it needs to be used. The only way you can see the pain that this bill is having and will inflict on people is to call it out, to make sure that people understand that it is in fact an evil bill, to call out those folks who like to call themselves religious and evangelicals, to ask them, what would Jesus do? What would Muhammad do? What would all these other folks do if they did find out that a rich country decided to make those who have in their practice abuse others find a legal way to transfer their wealth upward, to continue what I call legalized theft on those who are antiseptically enslaved. This is a shame. This is, in fact, a shame. It is absolutely a shame. And, again, like I said, after a few years when some of the angst have passed, a lot of people are going to be ashamed of what we allowed to occur to America. Ashamed that human beings behave this way. Ashamed. Sometimes it just puts you into wonder. All right, let's see. Let's see what else have we got here. Let's see. E2247. If you allow and hear me out, E2247, this is important. If you allow the uninformed, if you allow the ill-informed, if you allow the prejudiced, the racist, and all of these folks to adjust your behavior to what you want to get, then you have given them a victory. If you allow that, this is what I've learned over time, and I hope you're still here to hear what I'm saying. I'm saying E2247 because this is important. There are what's the word that I want to use? Evil folks infiltrating chats all over the internet. There are folks going in there to create a ruckus. And what the whole idea behind what they are doing is to keep disruption where intelligence is, keep disruption where good thoughts are, keep disruption in these places. And any day you move because they're in there attempting for the disruption, that means their disruption have worked. I live my values all of the times. A lot of folks ask me sometimes, why do I keep the engagement of racists? Why do I keep going? Let me tell you why I do these things. Because any day I stop, any day we stop, we have given the evil the victory. You don't exit the game. You don't allow. That is one of the issues that I have with progressives too often. It is always easy when you are confronted with the folks that are the evil ones, with the folks that are not doing things right, with the liars, with the thugs, with all of it's always easy to say, I'm gone, I shut the door, bye-bye. And guess who wins? The Donald Trumps of the world win. Donald Trump won because a lot of progressives checked out. Things weren't going exactly the way you wanted it to go. So you check out. I didn't quite, but you know what? What the folks who, yesterday was funny because you remember when Hillary talked about the deplorables? There is a group within the right-wing sect that are in fact deplorables. But if you allow the deplorables to win by checking out, then it's on us. And what we did, Donald Trump didn't look. Let's look at how many people voted for Joe Biden. Then look at how many people voted for Donald Trump the second time around. People checked out and they didn't do the marginal analysis. And we are having to recover and we are having to suffer because people checked out. America, you can't check out. The Mike Cesaks of the world are not going anywhere. They are powerless. They only get power if you check out. Understand that. They only are empowered if you decide, I am not willing to stand my ground. They are willing to stand in their lies. They are willing to stand in their hate. They are willing to stand in their prejudice. They are willing to stand in all the bad things. And if you check out, you have ceded it to them. And what we ceded is we ceded Trump a victory undeserved. Most Americans didn't want Trump. He won by default. And that is what we have to learn. My dear brother Magner, talk to me, sir. Talk to me.
I was hoping you were going to finish that rant first.
Oh, I'm done. My important thing is this, right? We have racists in the chat. We have prejudice in the chat. We have folks that all of that's in the chat. I can do something. I can say anytime we find somebody that doesn't compose or whatever, shut them out, shut them out, shut them out, shut them out. Or I can say, progressives, stand up. If you leave the game, you cede the game. But go ahead, my dear brother, talk to me.
That's not why I called, but I think that you're right because there are a lot of people that will just agree with the people around them without thinking. Mm-hmm. And the reason why they don't think is because they aren't offered the ethical decision or the multiple choice of what's going on. What I'm trying to say is when people come up and they have a smart aleck kind of funny joke that's at somebody's expense, unless you counter that, other people around them, because of serotonin and things, they're going to agree just because they see other people around them agreeing. So the pushback on racism, I think, is very important, and I appreciate you doing that. The reason why I called was to discuss ethics for a little bit. Mangione, we talked about him from time to time. I'd like to talk about him today.
Sure.
I believe he made an ethical choice because it turns out that he reduced suffering. United Healthcare decreased the number of denials that they had after that CEO died. In my mind, that decreased suffering and that preserved more lives than it lost. So my ethical compass says that it certainly wasn't evil, and I think that it was justified. What's very interesting is after United Healthcare slowed down their denials, do you know what happened?
What happened?
Their shareholders sued them.
You are kidding me. I haven't read that.
No,
I didn't
sir.
see that.
No, sir. I mean, I don't agree with the stock market, and from what I hear, you're not really excited about investing in things like that either.
No, I don't. I don't
shows,
invest in insurance companies. No.
It just shows how deplorable some of these investments, the stock market shareholders are. They're suing a company for honoring its
responsibility. But not only that, they're suing the company, you're telling me, for doing what they're supposed to do. Amazing. I hadn't read that. I'm glad you told me that. Now you're going to have me researching that.
Yes, sir. That was the main reason why I called. If you asked for a closer, I have one other comment and one other thing that's kind of been circling in my mind.
Well, I always want to hear your thought process. Go ahead, give me your closure.
I appreciate that. You're very generous that way. I've been thinking lately, now that people are starting to understand that if they get picked up by ICE, that they're probably not going to get their day in court. Isn't that actually going to increase the number of violent incidents eventually? It's not happening yet, but these people are going to fight back. They're going to have a handgun on them. You've talked about people defending themselves when they don't know who's coming into their house, but if they know that ICE is coming and they know that they're going to get deported to a prison where they're going to be tortured, especially if they're innocent, they might rather die in a shootout.
And isn't that what the people who believe in Second Amendment rights talk about, the tyranny of the government? Isn't that what they talk about all the time? The tyranny of the government. In other words, if a government becomes tyrannical, then the reason they want you to have the Second Amendment, what do they call it? The Second Amendment solution, right? I mean, and when you spoke about the insurance guy, I have to be careful in the way as a radio host I respond to that, but I understand exactly what you're saying, because again, if you take a look, the question is this: if X is causing by policy the deaths of a whole lot of people, and if X is eliminated and those deaths stop because policies are changed to allow for that, then the results out of what X did actually saved a lot of lives. So I mean, it's a mathematical equation, as I said, but I have to be very careful in the way I respond to what you just said. But look, let me tell you, countries justify collateral damage. Let's look at Israel tries to justify what they've done in Gaza by using the 1,200 innocent Israeli that got killed, and that gave them the license. They believe that gave them the license to kill thousands, tens of thousands of Gazans, right? It's not the case, but I'm trying to show you how we have double standards in the way we think. We wanted to get Noriega. America had no problem killing 10,000 Panamanians to bring Noriega to the United States. So we have selective views of what is murder and how we should treat it. Look, I feel for that young, beautiful young lady who was murdered 2 days ago in Washington, D.C. I feel her parents' pain. I have a 30-something-year-old daughter. If something happens to her, my heart sinks. I would be in horrendous pain. But shouldn't we feel that way for every child in Gaza that is bombed with one of our 2,000-pound bombs? Shouldn't we feel that way for every woman, child, and man in Gaza that is annihilated? We should.
Oh,
don't
absolutely.
You agree? And that is a kind of... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, even worse, starvation.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, we ought to start thinking logically. But look, we are near the end of the program, and I got to do my ask before we close down. So thank you so kindly for your call, Mr. Magner. And we'll...
Yes, sir. One more line. Sorry. Now, I was talking about shootouts and things. These ICE agents are poorly trained, and they're going to end up shooting each other.
I agree. And then when they do that, they're going to blame the elite, the undocumented worker then. It's amazing how these things work. Thank you so kindly, Patrick. We'll talk later, all right?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your holiday.
Yes, sir. All right, folks. We're at the end of the program. I'll probably do a couple of lives on Substack this weekend because there's so much happening. I want to hear people's pulse. Okay, so remember, go to politicsdoneright.com/subscribe on politicsdoneright.com/newsletter to subscribe to my Substack. I would love for you to subscribe, do a paid subscription if you can, because like I said, this is what subsidizes all the work that we do. So I'm going to put that link in there, politicsdoneright.com/substack. What am I saying? politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. My mind is fried. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Please click on that link. Consider becoming a paid subscriber. We do a whole lot, let me tell you, with over here. This is 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. But this is work that has to get done. As you can see, we make sure to do the work. We do the videos. We do the TikToks. We do the Instagrams. We do the whole work. So we are there flooding the zone with progressive, valid, truthful information to counteract the evil, to counteract the lies, and to try our best to make us a better place. Anyway, folks, I got to get out of here. Thank you so kindly for listening. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.